I'd like to remember Charlie Davis out of Lady Lake, Florida. He was born in Newburyport, July 26 of 1936, one of two children to the late Robert and Florence Davis. He was a 1954 graduate of Newburyport High School, after which he worked for several years at the Toll Silversmith Company of Newburyport. He was married to Eleanor Bryan of Newburyport, and on May 1st, 1966, he was appointed a call firefighter for the city. On December 1st, 1967, he was appointed a permanent firefighter, a position he held until his retirement on March 5th, 1999. Upon his retirement, he moved to the Villages in Ocala, Florida. One of the things he was known for was when there was no band that could be found to accompany the fire department to its annual Firemen's Memorial Service at Oak Hill Cemetery. He was one of three musically inclined firefighters who got together and formed the fire department band. I bet it was a good one. He leaves behind his wife and 4 children. Let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Jones, if you would call the roll, please.
I would be happy to do, President, for the meeting on November 1st, 2022. Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor Lane. Here. Councilor McCauley.
Here.
Councilor Preston.
Here.
Councilor Vogel.
Present.
Councilor Wallace.
Here.
Councilor Wright.
Here.
Councilor Zede. Hello. Councilor Cameron.
Here.
Councilor Donahue.
Here.
Wonderful. And Councilor Shan.
Present.
10 present, 1 hello. We are all together.
Are there any late files?
There are 3 late files. The first one is an Order 389 regarding naming rights for Market Landing Park. Communication 443 is an FAQ with respect to 59 Low Street. Communication 444 is a Planning and Development Net Zero memo.
Motion to waive the rules and accept the late files.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Next on the list is the public comment. So if there's anyone in the attendees via Zoom who wants to speak this evening, please raise your hand now.
None.
I'll recognize you, and then once the clerk comes back,
I'm empty-handed.
empty-handed. So if there's no one on the attendees list in Zoom, seeing no hands, we can move on from public comment to the mayor's comment.
All right, good evening, everyone. Happy Halloween. Hope everyone enjoyed Trick or Treat yesterday. We really had a great October here in Newburyport. We had so many events in and around the city. I can tell you last week, City Hall Trick or Treat and then downtown Trick or Treat was very well attended. So it was just so great seeing a lot of these, special events, bringing in fall around the city. Yesterday, we had a pretty cool event out in Plum Island as well. We welcomed our federal and state legislators. So Senator Ed Markey was out at Plum Island yesterday, Congressman Seth Moulton, State Senator Bruce Tarr, State Senator Diane Zoglio, and Lieutenant Colonel Michael Carvelli of the Army Corps of Engineers. I also want to point out, I want to thank Councilor Wright and his wife Leela for hosting us out there at Reservation Terrace, and also Ward 1 Councilor Zede for speaking at the event. But it was really just a great event. It was a beautiful day on Plum Island, just to kick off the dredge project. It's been going on for a couple weeks now. They're going to put 400 feet of beachfront back to Reservation Terrace, about 230,000 cubic yards of sand. And yesterday was important because it was to celebrate that this dredge happened after so many years of fighting for it, but it was also to get that plug in for the next step, right? I mean, I think we all are anxious for the beachfront to come back to Reservation Terrace, but it's that next piece about addressing the jetty. Senator Warren and Senator Markey were instrumental in getting us $240,000 that we're putting forward towards a study. And so we're already getting that bug in the Army Corps' ears that this study needs to take place as soon as we get the sand back on the beach so we can expedite this process. But yesterday was just a really great time to get together and talk about the importance of collaboration and building relationships and getting those types of things done. In the Health Department, Newburyport Health Director Laura Vlasic was recently elected Region 3 Regional Representative at the Massachusetts Health Officers Association meeting. So congratulations to Laura. This is great that she's going to give Newburyport a voice in a lot of these regional discussions around public health. We also have a couple of flu clinics coming up. So if you haven't got your flu shot yet, we have one at the Senior Community Center on November 10th from 1 to 4. And we also have one coming up on November 22nd. I know it's a few weeks away, but write it on the calendar because we're doing a flu/COVID booster clinic. So if you haven't got your booster shot yet or your flu shot, mark that one. And that's going to be coming here to City Hall. We've had some new hires too. I just wanted to highlight here at City Hall. We had Renee Ward start in Finance Director Ethan Manning's office as a financial purchasing analyst. She joined us on October 11th, so we're really excited to have Renee on board. Yesterday at the Council of Aging, the outreach specialist, Ann Freeman, started. I popped up there to see her, and she was already hard at work, so welcome, Ann. And on November 14th, we have two other new employees starting. We're going to have Doreen Gardner, who's coming to us from Newburyport Bank. She's going to be starting as the new accounting clerk in the treasurer's office. And we're also going to have James Pope start as our next director of information technology. This has been a long time coming. I think this is a position that's been open almost as long as I've been here, just a few days short. But we're really excited about James. He comes to us with a great resume. He came highly recommended as well. The current mayor of Gloucester, he was the first person that reached out and said, hey, go get this guy. He wasn't interested when I first reached out to him, but luckily he came back to us a few months later, and James will be starting on the 14th. So in your packet tonight, you have a supplemental budget. These are some things that we've identified to help us move forward this year. Some of the things you're going to see in that supplemental budget are fire department overtime, police training, which is a little bit higher this year because we sent a police officer to the academy, veteran services, and IT staffing. We're also asking for $50,000 for outside counsel for the Waterfront West process. And rental space for NYS, among other things. So again, I hope I can have your support on these initiatives tonight. They're really going to help us move forward throughout the year here. Another thing I wanted to give you a heads up on is we're going to have our annual joint City Council School Committee meeting around the budget. That is going to be November 15th at the Senior Community Center at 6:30. This meeting is a great chance to review the current financial condition of the city, and we can forecast revenues and expenditures, and this is just really helping us to better prepare for budget season, which comes upon us very quickly after the holidays. Finally, tonight, I have two more things I want to mention to you. Sorry if this is a little long-winded, but you have Newburyport Youth Services in your packet tonight. You will see a presentation at NYS at 59 Low Street. This presentation is going to be done by Kim Turner, Special Projects Manager, EGA Architects, Annie Egmart, our Director of Youth Services, and our Finance Director, Ethan Manning. And this presentation is a result of months of hard work since purchasing the building at 59 Low Street in January. Also accompanying this presentation is a bond request for $5.7 million. It is not uncommon, nor is it bad practice, to move to a bond at this stage in the project. Approving the bond at this time will signal that there is support behind this initiative and this project and allow us to move forward rather than to spend taxpayer money on a full design that may not gain council approval. Once we approve the plan in the bond order, we can then proceed to changing the zoning while further design work moves forward. Now, while this specific plan may be new to the council, the idea of a home for youth services is not a new one. NYS has been without a home since last October, and the time has come to have this conversation around NYS publicly. We are putting forth this plan that meets the needs of Newburyport Youth Services and gives the city an asset to be used for generations to come. While the cost is higher than it would have been had this project advanced several years ago, we plan to demonstrate that we have the funds and the bonding capacity available to move forward with this plan, and it will be the decision of the council how to proceed. The administration has answered and will continue to answer all questions that the council has about this plan and has made a significant effort to address all concerns. While discussions need to continue, there is no reason to delay this process. We believe this is a top-tier priority for the city and its youth, and that the children of Newburyport are worth the investment in NYS. We are committed to working with the council on this plan and to advance to the next steps as soon as possible. And finally, I just want to mention that, with the recent National Grid electricity prices hiking, some over 60% for this winter, my administration is happy to announce that the city has taken the first steps to aggregate electricity supply on behalf of all National Grid basic service users in the city. This means that the city, through the state's deregulated electricity market, has triggered its established opt-out aggregation program to combine the purchasing power of its residents to achieve savings on electricity costs for all basic service users. We are working closely with our contracted broker, Colonial Power Group, and have gone out to bid to supply and have received pricing that will provide basic service users with an approximate 36% discount off of the national grid rate from January through April in 2023. It is currently under review by the State Department of Public Utilities, and once approved, notification will be sent to all National Grid basic service users on or around November 15th. Also at that time, I'll make sure I send out a communication to you all. We're also setting up hosting information sessions all across the city as well. We're going to do these in different locations to give more access. We're looking at setting up 3 of these, and of course we'll add more if we need to. At this time, I quickly just want to acknowledge all the efforts through the years to establish this program. It took several years to become an aggregated community through the Department of Public Utilities process, and I'd like to thank the former administration, the EAC, the Energy Advisory Committee, the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, the city's Sustainability Office, and Colonial Power Group for all their contributions in developing this program for the city. That's probably good. Any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Questions?
Sorry there was so much tonight.
No question? Councilor Donahue.
Sure, thank you so much. Just a quick clarification, the application program, is that something that residents need to opt into to get the savings or opt out?
No, everyone who's a National Grid basic user will be in it, and they have the ability to opt out
If they don't want it?
if they don't want it. Yep.
Okay, cool, thank
Yep.
you. That's all I have, thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Have a great meeting.
All right, Clerk Jones, the consent agenda.
The consent agenda this evening consists of the approval of the minutes for October 11. There are 8 communications. The first 3 are applications: a ladies' night out, rum, wine, and chocolate, 12/3, 2 to 5 p.m., Nicholson Hall, Public Safety. Next is DEI Alliance Table Invitation Night, 12/2, 12/9, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. in Market Square. It goes to Public Safety. Also, application invitation nights. This is just a notification from the chamber that there will be invitation nights 12/2, 12/9, and 12/16, 6 to 9 p.m. We have a communication with respect to the menorah in Market Square. It's an annual request, 12/12 to 12/27. That's to go to general government. There's a letter from Owen Smith regarding the Parks Department, Neighborhood and City Services. There's a notification and a request for confirmation that the IT Director, James Pope, be installed as the director. The electric charging communication will go to Public Safety. There's a communication with respect to the New England Sketchbook is seeking an A-frame at 1R Water Street. That's to go to License and Permits. There are 4 transfers. General Fund, free cash, $655,000 to the waterfront culvert replacement, same amount. Budget and Finance, transfer 140, waterfront paid parking fund, $40,000, and Harbor Master retained earnings, $20,000 through the park expansion project for a total of $60,000. Budget and Finance, transfer 141, General Fund, free cash, $500,000 to Stabilization Trust Fund, same amount. Budget and Finance. And General Fund free cash, $18,006 to Parklet Maintenance Fund, same amount, Budget and Finance. We have the following appointments: Susan Chase, 44 Oak Street; Emma Andrews, Library, 11/1/2023; Elizabeth Valeriani, 29 Oak Street; Emma Andrews, 11/1/2023; Virginia Champy, 84 Purchase Street; Emma Andrews, 11/1/2023; and Anya Elrod, 43 Purchase Street; Emma Andrews, until 11/1/2023. Following items are removed automatically from their respective committees. Market Landing Ad Hoc, we have the project update and the design progress from Sasaki. Budget and Finance, we've got the supplemental budget. Education, we have Whittier Tech operational report. Neighborhood and City Services, we have Kevin Hunt's appointment. Public Safety, we have the following Assistant Harbor Master, Shellfish, and Special Police Officers: Gregory Downs, 40 Riverview Drive, Newbury; Mike Merriman, 6 Little Pond Road, Merrimack; Andrew Malastesta, 37 Federal Street; William Jarman, 8 Harvard Road, Groveland, Ben Molnar, 12B Summerwood Drive, Hampton, Michael Millette, 7 Summit Drive, Atkinson. And then we have the following ordinances: ordinance 123, 124, 126, and 127 with respect to noise ordinances, handicap spaces, and resident zone.
Can I remove, please, 139, 141, and 142, the transfers?
139, 141, and 42,
Correct.
leaving 140
Thank you.
out to the regular.
Yes, please.
And that's the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to approve as amended?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on to the regular agenda. I believe we have a presentation.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to be presenting a brief presentation regarding 59 Low Street. I have a number of people with me here tonight, including Patrick Mixdorf and Scott Hall from EGA Architects, as well as Andy Egmont, the department head for NYS, and Ethan Manning, the finance director. We're going to try to keep this brief, 15 minutes, to allow time for questions if you have any. We're going to be throwing a lot of information at you tonight, but the hope is to try to present as much of the work we've been doing over the last few months as possible. If you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So tonight, the overview is that we're going to give a brief background and how we got here, followed by with 3 different options of utilization of the building on 59 Low Street to present to you, along with associated cost estimates, and then finally, hopefully giving some time for discussing next steps and questions. Next slide. So one of the major objectives in the mayor's strategic plan is to provide a high quality of public services that serve children and families with educational and youth services programming. Another one of the major objectives in the mayor's strategic plan is to also invest in medium to long-term capital assets that meet the city's needs. We've heard from numerous residents in the community that a shared goal that we have in Newburyport is to support our youth and hopefully find a home for youth services. Next slide. So let's talk about the process and how we got here so far. In March, you heard another presentation from me where we presented a proof plan, which was a plan of the site showing the existing building, a modular gym, and associated parking based on the 1 to 500 square feet of footprint that showed that those components of a design could fit within the current zoning parameters and the wetlands as they stood that day. We knew that the wetlands were flagged, had been flagged 3 years previous and were therefore out of date, quote unquote, for a potential notice of intent. So the wetlands were reflagged in April and May of this year, and an RDA was approved unanimously by the Conservation Commission, which sets the new wetland lines for 3 years. Since April, we've been working with NYS and EGA Architects to perform conceptual design for the property. We did intensive programming exercises with the department to understand what they needed in terms of supporting the kids in the community as well as their administration in the department. And tonight's presentation will be presenting what we found during those exercises. Next slide. So let's step back a moment for the wetlands. The last time you all saw this plan, the wetland line was slightly reconfigured than what you're seeing on this plan. In the rear of the building, so towards the southwest on this plan, the wetlands were slightly closer to the back part of the building, and then along the southeast property line, or that side property line with the powder house, they were slightly further back. So what happened is the wetlands actually receded, the wetland line flags receded to the existing chain link fence in the rear of the building, and they crept up a little bit closer to Low Street along the shared property line with the powder house. So the original proof plan that you all saw showed more or less a side-loaded parking configuration. The gist is that the proof plan still technically works. It's just that the configuration of the different components of the plan are slightly different from what you've seen previously. Next slide. So now we're going to start to go through the 3 different options, and in each one, there's going to be a presentation of the floor plan, the site plan, and the cost estimates. We invited EGA here tonight, but I think for the sake of time, I'm just going to give broad brush overview of the floor plan, so excuse my architectural lingo. We do have the professionals here, so if you have questions for them, they are available, and also free to jump in at any time if there's something I'm missing. Next slide, please. So one thing I want to note is that in order to keep the text right side up, this plan is actually flipped from what you saw on the site plan. So Low Street in this plan is to the left, and the wetlands are towards the right, with the powder house being at the top of this plan. So stand on your head from the site plan you just saw. The gist of this is that the large rectangle at the bottom of the plan is the outline of the existing building. The light blue rectangle at the top of the plan is the modular gym, and then there's a small addition or annex that connects the two. So the big elements of this plan that were identified during our programming exercises with NYS are that the brown spaces you're seeing at the core of the building are the administrative offices. The reason that they're located in that area is because that allows the admin to have eyes on the front door so they can monitor children coming into and out of the building. The darker blue are the restrooms. The left-hand side of the existing building, which is the smaller of the garage bays, for those of you who have been to the site, is dedicated for the preschool age children. It says preschool, but they're actually just preschool age programming. And that's important for the department because they wanted to be able to segregate the younger students from the teen or youth center to allow teens to feel like they're not coming into a preschool when they're visiting their youth center. So with the brown areas as the administrative offices, the blue is the toilets, and the preschool, what that allows is that lighter green area is wide open for the youth, the majority of the youth center, which allows for 5 different flexible spaces. So the back or the larger garage bay, for those that are familiar with the building, is the teen hangout space. That has a movable partition that would allow that space to be broken up into a larger space or 2 smaller rooms based on the programming. Towards the bottom side of the building, you've got the multi-purpose and art space, which also has a movable partition, so that can be broken up into 2 rooms or left open for 1 large room. And then in the middle, you have a quiet study area where teens can come and do their homework in a quiet space. Next slide, please. So now you're going to flip yourself upside down again, and this is the site plan. The existing building is at the top on this plan, and the modular gym is on the bottom. Low Street's on your right, and the wetlands are on your left. The powder house is at the bottom. So this just shows sort of that proof plan in a reconfigured way. We've got parking, 1 per 500 square feet of a footprint, so that equals to 23 parking spaces. There's 2 handicap accessible spaces closest to the front door. And what you can see here is that it's ample space to have, for scale, a half basketball court. Not that they would necessarily want that, but just to give you an idea of how much patio space there can be, or hard space. There's also a patio area, and it allows the entire back part of the property to be open, unprogrammed lawn for children to be able to run around freely. The hatched area is the square footage of above surface stormwater that we have identified with the city engineer in terms of test pits that were dug by the engineers and previous environmental studies. We know there are clay soils out there, so subsurface stormwater is not going to be feasible, but this is the square footage of detention basin that would be required to meet the stormwater needs there. Next slide. Sure. Oh, yes, there's a separate tot lot at the top there, thank you, Patrick, for the preschool area, so that the preschool play area and the teen play area are 2 separate locations on the plan. Next slide. So this cost estimate came in higher than we were expecting. The total came to just shy of 8.1 million. Again, according to, increase of construction costs, just the climate that we're in economically right now. So what we did from there is we did an intensive value engineering of option A. If you want to go to the next slide. So we'll go through, again, floor plan, site plan, and cost estimate for option B. Next slide. So we're flipping this back over. Low Street's on your left, wetlands are on the right. So relatively similar configuration. It has all the same number of spaces as the previous plan. Everything has just gotten slightly smaller. The new addition, which is that connector between the modular gym and the existing building, is a higher cost element, so we've substantially shrunk that down. What that meant is that 2 of the 6 admin offices got shifted to the teen hangout space, and those 2 offices are the 2 that are most closely linked with the teen center, which allowed us to reduce the addition substantially. We also eliminated one of the toilets. In option A, we had a dedicated preschool and a dedicated staff toilet, and in this scenario, they are a shared restroom facility. The offices got slightly smaller. The hangout got slightly smaller, but functionally, this is working in the same way for youth services than option A. The other sort of main reason why the reduction in cost was we looked a little bit harder at the net zero, and there's a memo in your packet related to the current ordinance. So we took out the solar array and the battery backups and kept sort of the high intensity insulation so that the building itself will be far more energy efficient than current day, but we are not generating energy on site. We also eliminated some skylights and a kind of covered entrance, eliminated a scoreboard and some of the finishes. But for all intents and purposes, functionally, from a support of the department standpoint, this sort of fits that need. Next slide. Site plan doesn't change much from the other one, so I won't waste time going through that one. Cost estimate came down from 8.1 to 5.7 and some change. Again, I discussed already what sort of the main cost value engineering moves were there. Next slide. So the next step was to say, all right, we know that what we can get for 8, we know we can get for 5.7. What would we be able to get for $3 million on this scenario? Next slide. So we did another plan with EJ, and what you're seeing here is if we just renovated the existing building in its current configuration. So what we've determined is that this, and Andy Egmont can speak a little bit more to this, doesn't suit the needs of the department quite as well. One of the big differences you'll see is that the front door is actually on the rear or the side of the building. There is still the need for a slight addition just for the restrooms that would be required per code. The office spaces are substantially smaller. There's a lot of wasted space in the existing foyer when you enter into the front door. The hangout gets about a third smaller. The art room gets moved over into the hangout space. The multi-purpose space gets switched with the study, and the study is on the sort of side of the building. We've also dotted in a potential for where the future modular gym could go, but the parking and the site work stays the same. Next slide. So this is the site plan, which again is no different from what you'd seen before. It's slightly more outdoor space in this scenario than in options A and B. Next slide. And then just a very rough breakdown of where the $3 million would come from, with an addition of if you did a modular gym phased in or at the same time. Scott.
I think the important thing to note too is option A and option B, trying to move in the net zero energy direction, have all electric heating systems, where option C would maintain the existing gas-fired furnaces that are in the building now.
So it does not meet the net zero needs because you're utilizing the existing gas systems. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention in options A, B, and possibly C is that there's storage up in the eaves of this. So there's a staircase that you'll notice in options A and B, which gets you up to not a head height, not a full story, but it allows the department to use the eaves for storage. Next slide. I'm going to let Andy Egmont take over from here.
Hi, everybody. I'm not actually going to read through my slides. You all have them. So I actually wrote things down. I normally speak off the cuff, but I figured I'd stick to my points tonight. I mean, I don't have to tell you all how excited I am to be at a point where we're presenting options on behalf of the NYS team to remind you how not having a space is impacting the services that we're able to provide, but that it's not about the department. It's about the children and families and being able to meet their needs as best, to the best that we're able to. There are three key principles that you must know and understand about NYS. These serve as guiding principles when looking at any space that we use, whether temporary or designing a building. So they're paramount in looking at the designs with the architects. They are 1, safety and accountability, 2, age appropriateness, and 3, creating a community and sense of belonging. All 3 of these designs replicate the same 5 spaces that we've been using for the last 5 years or so at the Brown School. So I just want to talk about what those spaces are a little bit. The Rec and Enrichment Division will primarily use the preschool or early ed space. This is space, as Kim said, that's designed to be age appropriate and safe for children under the age of 6. This is not a preschool. It is a space that is used for playgroups, for parent and child programs, for our Dads and Donuts on Saturdays, and a variety of other programs that we offer primarily during the day for families, but also some after school for our younger kindergartners and whatnot. So Rec and Enrichment would use that space in the multi-purpose room, which is a blank slate that can be set up either as an open space for floor programs or with tables and chairs in a variety of different settings. That's used for things like Lego robotics, different types of, like a D&D club might meet in there. We have a whole variety of things. Councilor Cameron's interested in D&D, I see. And then they would also use the art room during non-rec center hours, so when the teens aren't there. The Youth Program Division, which serves middle and high school youth, would utilize the teen hangout, the art room, and the study. We also look at the study as a space that could be used as a conference room for staff during the day. Other community groups could meet in there as well when it's not being used. It will be a more quiet space. And of course, the gym. And as I've stated numerous times, the gym is a really crucial programming piece for all age groups. It is, to me, it is absolutely a necessary piece of this design. So option A, and this is the best design for the department. It is everything that we kind of hoped when it was done and the architects brought it to us. We all went, oh my God, they made it work. They actually figured out how to do it in this building. It allows for the most participants at one time. It offers larger and more connected spaces for programs, creates an admin suite to keep us working together and connected. It offers, one piece that you wouldn't see unless you looked at the detail, is it offers the ability to teach cooking. That is one of our #1 programs that people want, and it's a life skill that we really try to work with young people on. And only option A allows that one. It also uses every inch of space that's available in the building while creating line of sight for staff and the ability to close off the building when the gym's being used. You all know that our department is also committed to creating a safe place for all of the young people that we serve, and that we want everyone treated with dignity. These are the little things about these designs that I think the general public wouldn't necessarily know, which is why I appreciate the chance to talk about it. But even something like the bathrooms, we have young people who need a gender-neutral bathroom. We have young people who need a bathroom because of special needs, that may need a staff to go in with them or something along those lines. Option A is really the only one that creates a space with dignity, and we're not saying, okay, well, you can't use the general bathroom, so you have to use a preschool bathroom, right? You have to share with preschoolers. And that goes for our staff as well. So that's just one of those pieces that what the type of spaces that we're creating. Option B works. It's basically the same without the bells and whistles. It's like the next level down in cars. That's how I view it. And its capacity for participants is about the same as what we had at the Brown School. The level of safety and accountability are changed a bit because of without having the ability to close off sections of the building the same way. However, Councilor McCauley, the last time I was here, you had asked, like, well, how are you going to take the square footage that you had and make it work in this space? And I think I told you, we have to create flexible spaces. And A and B both offer that ability to create flexible spaces. A more so than B, but both of them allow us to use spaces differently to do that. And they also still allow us to keep separate age-appropriate spaces that creates that sense of community and belonging that each different developmental stage needs, which is really important to us as a department. Option C, I know it was referred to in the paper as a red herring, but I want to explain why I asked the mayor's office to make a note that it doesn't meet our needs. And that's because it is an option. It's just not a good option, as far as in my opinion, professional opinion. It is, anyone could look at it and say, yes, that's, you could move in there. I know some of you walked into the building and thought, why can't they just move in and use it the way it is now? Our department has now used several spaces that were not designed for us and made them work. And that's exactly what that would be. It's a layout that's not designed for us with our needs in mind, but it could work. It's, I had asked as a department head to include that without a gym and with significantly lower occupancy, it doesn't meet our need. Our goal all along has been to create a permanent home with, at a minimum, the same space that we had at the Brown School. So again, it is an option. I think it was really important. I know one city councilor had told me I have a $2 million price tag on this project, so I feel like if we hadn't put it in there, it would have been, well, what could you get for less? So, I think that the architects really were doing us a favor in looking at our due diligence of what the different price points were. And I hope that I have the opportunity to answer more questions, possibly in committee or wherever this goes next. Thanks.
Thank you.
You can skip a couple slides.
So in terms of funding for this project, there's currently $600,000 remaining from the sale of the Kelly School, which of course those funds are governed by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 63, which essentially, says that municipal sale proceeds of real estate must be reinvested either to pay down existing debt on the property, which there is none, or invested in a capital project with a useful life of greater than or equal to 5 years, which naturally a building project such as this would be. Then, of course, the bulk of the project being funded by a borrowing authorization. And you can see we just included a table showing the various project costs based on the 3 different options, subtracting the available funds, being the Kelly School, brings you to a borrowing amount ranging from $2.4 million up to $7.5 million, with estimated annual debt service of $139,000 up to $432,000 for the highest option A. Next slide, please. And then, of course, how does this fit in with our other borrowing needs? And I apologize for some of the small font on this page. But essentially what we tried to illustrate here is kind of what we have on the horizon, based on our knowledge of the capital improvement program, kind of based on, what projects do we realistically see, moving forward, over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So currently there's existing debt. this is within the levy limit, so it excludes our debt excluded projects, which are the bigger ones, the Bresnahay and the Knockmolen Senior Community Center. So this is we're funding it within the existing tax levy. So there's currently 15.6 million in existing debt. And then you can see to the right, I won't go through each project, but you can see how the annual debt service kind of waterfalls upwards in this chart. And over to the right, I'm showing a green bar, which is really nothing scientific, but that's basically the policy target that we've been talking about through the capital planning process as a good benchmark to get to as a city and reflective of our financial forecasts. So you can see kind of based on that generic policy target that of course we cannot fund all of these projects, as shown on this slide, and we would be looking at other available funding options such as ARPA, free cash, grants, other available funds, and of course debt exclusions for some of the larger projects. And next slide, please. And which option has the best value? Kim, can I give this to you? Okay.
Thanks. So we just sort of put another chart together that shows the square foot cost of each of the options. And at the bottom, you'll see if the senior community center were to be built today, it would be roughly $768 per square foot to build, or a target of about 11.9 million if we were to build that today. So comparatively, all of these options are lower than that number. With option A being at 700 a square foot, option B being at 523 a square foot, and option C at 463 a square foot, with the note, again, that option C doesn't really meet the needs of the department as it stands. So next slide, I think, is the end, possibly. Okay, so next steps here in the packet tonight is a request for a bond order. Next steps would be potentially to, we need a zoning change again to create a community center district for this property, as well as a request for funding. And the next slide wraps it up if there are any questions.
Do we have time for questions?
Give you a few minutes.
If I, to the architects perhaps, I just had a question. As I'm looking at the square footage or look at your layouts, you're talking, essentially, what was that, 130 square feet, right? No, what's the total, where's the square footage? Sorry. I'm looking at the pictures, and I just don't understand. I don't see from A to B where it disappears.
So the primary difference between A and B is really what Kim called that annex, that new piece of building between the existing building and the gym.
Yep.
There's a small notch taken out of there. There's not a huge difference in square footage between either of those two options, but that's where the square footage comes out of.
Okay.
The gym stays the same size. Obviously, the existing building stays the same size. So it's just that notch where we can reduce area. I think she also talked about us reducing a covered walkway that was at the front of the building that doesn't really show up on the plan. So that had some pretty significant impact in cost relative to that option. But the square footage is really a slightly smaller annex.
Right, so that's why I was at.
The water surface, there was a little addition on the
That's right, on
west
the,
side of the building in option A.
Say that one more time.
down on the lower left-hand corner of the plan in option A, there's a little bump out
Got it.
where
Yep.
some utility stuff goes.
Okay, and that goes away, so that goes into the building?
That's right.
Okay, and then also the net zero piece, right? So A was net zero.
As close as we can get it.
Okay, and B is further away from net zero.
Yeah.
Yes.
Option B retains the well-insulated envelope. We do everything to make the envelope and the energy usage of the building as good as possible, but we eliminated the solar arrays, the batteries that go with them, sort of the energy generation part of the net zero equation.
So one more question on that. So theoretically, solar arrays generate electricity. Theoretically, you can sell that back to the utility. There's tax advantages or perhaps rebates and so on and so forth. Have all of those things been considered when looking at A over B?
So there would be a report that would be required as part of the new ordinance, and because we're in the 8% sort of conceptual phase on this, we haven't done that report yet. But yes, in theory, there would be energy generation here with any luck. I also sent out an FAQ to the council, I'm not sure if you received it, that the building, if we decided to go option B with the high energy efficiency with the insulation, the building could be made solar ready, that could be grant funded down the road to make up that difference. Those are just options that are available to us.
Right, but so you're asking us to approve a grant or approve a funding, but yet, you know my position on this. I'll give you whatever you want, but I'm also concerned about the idea that, if there's an opportunity, perhaps others would like to hear that it's maybe not, in fact, 8 million. That it's, comes down because of these other enhancements.
That's correct, and it's not a question I can answer tonight, but we could do that report and find that information
I would think
out.
that would be something that would be very helpful. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Zaid?
Thank you. I just whittled mine down to 3 questions. So the first one is on the cost estimate that has been provided, and I'm not sure whom to ask, but my understanding is that the cost estimate does not include things like any changes to Low Street itself for the crossing or anything like that. I didn't actually understand that was a tot lot, so that's something I learned, but does this cost estimate include filling the tot lot with the things that a tot lot needs, like a playground? And then does it or doesn't include the roof of the existing building? And I'm not sure who I'm looking at. Whoever. So I guess the core question is there more detail available from the cost estimate that could be shared? Because it's fairly high level. It just says gym, building.
Yes, there's a full multi-page cost estimate,
Okay.
which we figured we'd provide during subcommittee meetings that would have a lot more information in it.
So does it include those 3 things, Low Street, playground, equipment itself, and the roof, or yes and no, or different?
There is an allowance for playground equipment.
Okay.
In option B.
In option A, that's been eliminated for the value engineering of option B.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily required, so we've moved towards what's called adventure-based play, which is using used carts as opposed to pre-constructed playgrounds. It's not a large area, it's an area to go outside and play and explore. It's not.
Right.
It's not going to be a full-size playground. There's one of those across the street.
Okay.
For your second question about Low Street, that is not included in the cost estimate, but it was included in the FAQ that was submitted. We got a cost estimate that we could install a painted crosswalk and a crossing light, which is like the hawk signal, in-house for between $12,000 and $15,000. A raised crosswalk's not recommended per DPS because this is a main street and not a secondary street. And a sidewalk on this side of the street was also not recommended because it wouldn't connect to another sidewalk. So the thinking would be that you'd install a painted crosswalk with a signaled light to get children from the school to 59 Low Street or vice versa, but utilizing the existing sidewalk that's across the street from 59 Low.
So I'll leave that question there. I'd love to see the more detailed cost estimates, especially on that traffic, because I recall it cost over $400,000 to install a hawk down at Parker and State. So my second question and third are actually for Ethan. On the slide with the bars on it, just 2 quick questions. One is, if I'm understanding the way that you've structured this chart, you're effectively saying the city can basically almost double its debt before it hits that policy target. So in other words, that 15.6, if you add up all those little pieces, you're almost getting up to another 15 of debt. It's about 12 or 13, let's say. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, not in terms of the debt service that we're paying out of the budget. not in terms of the actual principal outstanding.
Right.
Because it'll depend on the borrowing term for each
Right.
project.
Okay, sure. And then the third question kind of dovetails on that. So I read the chart the same way you did, which is that this shows that we are going to run out of money to do all of these projects, right? Unless you're going to far exceed, and that's taking into account that we agree on the policy target, which is a debate itself. So am I to understand that your position or the administration's position is we're going to fill the gap in with with ARPA, which is non-regenerating free cash, which we already use to fund everything else, and then basically going to the taxpayers for, say, debt exclusion for the fire station headquarters? Because that seems to be the only way that how else do you solve this problem?
Yes, and I think that's how it's attempted to have been characterized in the CIP document. Correct, it would be unrealistic to fund all of these projects within the levy limit. It's just not sustainable based on Proposition 2.5 and how much we can increase the budget each year.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, good for discussion in committee to continue. Thank you.
All right, so that was a little bit longer than 15 minutes, but thank you very much for the presentation. If there are no other questions, I'm sure we'll be talking about it more soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, going back to the agenda, mayor's update.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No first appointment readings, communications, transfers. We have 3.
Point of order, I think we have the 2 late file communications that we didn't address because we didn't insert them in.
Thank you, Counselor.
You have 59 Low Street FAQs, communication 443.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance and Committee of the Whole. And
Second.
I just speak to it real quick. I don't have any strong opinion about this going to budget, but everything seems like the bond order is likely to go to budget, so keep everything together, I thought. But if that's not amenable, then I'm happy to send it to planning, but it'll just split the content up. I'm not sure that's easier.
Excuse me, is that both?
Budget and Committee of the Whole, not planning and
But
development.
not communication 444 also?
443 only. So I think 44 is more general.
Okay.
So I thought that would be better for planning.
Okay. So communication 443 going to Budget and Finance and Committee of the Whole. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And communication 444.
Motion to refer to Planning and Development.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And the order as well? Thank you. The late file order,
Well, I think we'd take that up at orders.
is that next?
Transfers.
I'm sorry, we have transfers next, sorry.
Transfers.
Transfer 139, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, yes.
Free cash, 655,000.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance.
Second.
Counselor Z?
I'm going to oppose sending this to committee, and I wanted to explain why. The reason I pulled 139, 41, and 42 is that the most fundamental part is just that free cash literally just certified, and in my humble opinion, and being on budget for a while, the next step is actually to set the tax rate before we start entertaining splintering off other free cash things. That's always been, I have no objection to spending free cash in the fall. I just think the next step is we need to have the debate about free cash as it relates to the tax rate, and then once we complete that, then we sort of really know what's available to pay. I also want to just unfortunately take strong exception with 139. I made my thoughts known during the committee on ad hoc on waterfront, but I think this was really just poor work, frankly, to bring this at the last minute and say, hey, it's not related to the waterfront park, but you'd be a fool to fund the waterfront park and then have to dig it up later to put the culvert in. So I want to express my displeasure with that, and for those 2 reasons, I will oppose sending this to committee in the first place. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor Z. So the motion on the floor is to send 139 to Budget and Finance.
Correct.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Roll call. On sending it to Budget and Finance, Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane? No. Councilor McCauley?
No.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Counsel Vogel?
Yes.
Counsel Wallace?
Yes.
Counsel Wright?
No.
Counsel Zede?
No.
Counsel Cameron?
Yes.
Counsel Donahue?
Yes.
Counsel Shan?
Yes.
Goes to committee. Thank you.
And now a collective motion to send 141 and 142 to budget,
Second.
Second.
and just ditto. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor to send 141 and 142 to Budget and Finance, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
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 Roll call.
Sending 141 and 142 to Budget and Finance. Counsel Khan?
Yes.
Counsel Lane?
No.
Counsel McCauley?
Yes.
Counsel Preston?
Yes.
Counsel Vogel?
Yes.
Counsel Wallace?
Yes.
Counsel Wright?
No.
Counsel Zede?
No.
Counsel Cameron?
Yes.
Counsel Donahue?
Yes.
Counsel Shan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. I believe we've caught up on the late files and what was in the consent agenda. Now moving on to orders.
So the first order would be 386, 2 to 6 Market Street. It's a sidewalk easement.
Motion to refer to Planning and Development?
Second.
All those in favor of sending 386 to P&D, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
If I might, President, Order 387 says signage, Jefferson Street. I'm sorry, that's totally my fault. It's Forrester Street, not Jefferson Street. We'll call it a Scrivener's error. Everything else about the order is the same.
Motion to refer to Neighborhood and City Services?
Second.
But it does say Jefferson. What am I missing?
It should say Forrester.
All of it? Because even the order says it.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
When I make a mistake, I'm consistent.
Mistake's been made before.
Motion stands.
Same neighborhood.
Actually, I would like to have this go to public safety. It's a parking sign issue, so,
I'll change.
yes, with the,
Okay.
thank you.
Public safety.
Who was the second on that?
Second.
Second.
Gotcha.
All right. All those in favor of sending Order 387 to Public Safety, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next.
Next is the NYS bond order. So,
Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, Council President, I stand, and I'm going to ask the sponsor, if they would consider withdrawing this without prejudice at this time. It is a little preliminary. The bond order is basically asking us to spend $300,000 a year for the next 30 years with 15 minutes of review of the plan. I would think that this, if withdrawn, this could come back in first quarter after we have time to review the plan and be a little bit more inclusive in terms of all of the things, all of the questions that were asked tonight and the details that were there. Thank you.
So thank you for that. I do know that the bond does require at least 30 days, and it doesn't need to even be approved this year. So I don't have a problem with this one going to committee. And there'll be opportunity, I'm sure, to continue this discussion about what we've seen tonight. I would expect that to be part of the discussion, to be honest.
I'd make a motion to send it to committee, Budget and Finance Committee and the Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Comments?
Oh, please.
Yeah, just a quick question. Can you reiterate that, or someone, just on the scheduling and the timing, how that would work?
So bonds, from what I understood from Ethan, and Ethan, you can speak to this as well.
I'm happy to just say that under City Council rules, we do have to have 2 cycles or 30 days before a bond could come back, right, unless there's a waiver of the rules. But as a more practical matter, I was going to say this during budget. I had to post yesterday because I had to meet the 48 hours, so it's on there, but I don't expect that we're going to get to it in any substantive fashion on Thursday. I don't have a schedule yet, but it's something that I'll be working with the administration on because we want to invite people in, I'm sure. I'm going to, just like the budget, I'm going to poll everybody to ask who they would like to see, and we'll try and come up with a cogent process for it. So in terms of the timeline, the committee, I guess, doesn't exactly know yet, but to answer the question, it's 30, the rule, I can't remember what number it is, but it's 30 days or 2 meetings.
True.
I do want to, I don't want to cut you off, though. I'll go after you. if
That
you wanna
answer your
go.
questions. Like to do anything with a bond, it requires it to be in committee or at least out for 30 days before we can do any kind of action on it. So honestly, there's nothing that we can do with this until December.
Okay.
That's a bond rule.
If I may, so it's,
Go ahead.
the restriction is that the 30 days is a minimum. It could go
Oh, yeah.
longer. Okay, thank
Absolutely,
you,
we can
thank you.
Definitely go longer. Counselor Zede?
Yeah, I just want to say this. I think I support the Ward 5 counselor's request. I think that we've been doing a lot of discussion about time and the time we put into this and how do we have less time and how do we have more productive time. And I'm really starting to feel like, or the way I'm starting to think about things, is sending to committee is almost a completeness vote. It's sort of like a planning board taking a completeness vote on an application, saying it's ready. And I don't feel that this is at that point yet. I think 8% is pretty nascent. That's been a long time fight for me to try and keep bonds from getting passed when we're at that such an early stage in the process. And I also think that it often leads to less productive conversations. And I think that sometimes if you have it outside of that context, maybe it's, if the presentation, for example, had come in as a communication, which it didn't, that I can see, it just was a presentation, it didn't get referred anywhere, that maybe that would have been a better vehicle to answer everybody's questions. Do it in the context of a bond means what it means. And to the counselor's question, yeah, that's a minimum set by our rules. There is no maximum, and there is no state. This isn't like zoning where there's some clock ticking externally. So I support the Ward 5 counselor's point, and I don't think it'll matter, but we can only say what we think. So
Thank you,
when we do.
Counselor Zede. So the motion's on the, Counselor Wallace.
Sure, I have a question possibly for the administration. I was going to ask this during the presentation earlier, but what are the next steps in terms of permitting with the planning board, additional Concom, if the department reorganization comes back? Because it does fit into the schedule. Because it would be nice to have these conversations all at once and not go back and forth and have many, many meetings. So I'm just curious what the schedule and the sequencing would be.
Sure, so this would have to be a full notice of intent with Conservation Commission, so that's required. It would have to go through site plan review with the planning board. I think those are the two main permitting needs.
Okay. And if I may follow up, so.
Oh, that's
zoning.
the zoning change, yes.
So in terms of design, is there going to have to be another round of design before you can go to the planning board or the Conservation Commission?
This is the conceptual plan, so we wouldn't present anything for permitting until we had a schematic and/or design development set that we would then be able to show. Because once you get the permitting for notice of intent, you don't want to change the footprint or the square footage of anything, so yes.
So they're looking at maybe like a 75% design typically?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're at 8 right now,
Okay.
so we're very early.
All right, thank you.
Counselor Vogel?
Yes, thank you, Council President. I would just like to comment that I think that the idea of sending this to committee and considering it for bonding shows our intent. And again, without any pressures of, length of time, it shows our intent for the administration to continue to move forward and continue the development of a design. If we're going to sit back and let this languish, what are they going to be doing? Are they going to be going out and going ahead and developing a design without us having even considered whether or not we're going to bond it or not? So I think it is actually proper at this point in time to go ahead and take a look at the bonding and give the signal, because that's what we're doing. That's what the signal will be. The signal will be, hey, we're all in. We want a building for NYS. And I think that's what we're doing, and I would like to encourage everyone to vote yes, sending it to committee and to start the process.
Counselor McCauley, then Counselor Zede.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. Part of my ask originally was that all we have is before us going to committee is a request for a bond. We don't have any communication, as the Ward 1 councilor had pointed out, about having a discussion which was asked for by the administration about having a public commitment to NYS. We don't have that. All we have is a bond order. We don't get any say in the design, because the design is going to be done by someone else. All we're asked to do is pay for it. So we can't, the way it's structured right now, I would have loved to see the presentation come in as a communication, and we could have referred it to planning and development possibly, and we could have had discussions about, on a public level, what the programming needs are for NYS, so we could stop having such a divisive conversation in the public square and say, hey, listen, they have these needs, X, Y, and Z, and we've acknowledged those needs, and we've publicly had a hearing on it, and we've spoken about it, and the public has bought in, and they've seen the concessions that are being made. But no, we don't have any of that. All I'm being asked for here in this is to commit $300,000 for the next 30 years, and I don't get a say in it. And to me, that's wrong. And that's why I'm asking us to take a different venue. Not that I'm not committed to the program, because for 15 minutes, how can I be that committed to it? I'm committed to having a public debate about what the value NYS brings and why the city and the taxpayers should make a commitment to this facility. Right or wrong? Maybe the answer is we don't, but maybe the answer is we do. But right now, this is why I wanted to go that way. This is nothing more than that. Thank you.
So I would like to, Councilor Donahue?
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair, President. I'm admittedly a little bit disconcerted by what I'm hearing. We've said no to every request that has come before us in regards to NYS since I took office in January. We have not given these kids an ounce of hope. We have not given any trust to this department head. And we're asking them to basically hand over the reins because we don't trust them. I find that deplorable. I find that to be incredibly disingenuous. I find it to have no trust. We would not do that in other situations. We would not ask the professionals who know their business best what their purpose is. We know that DPS fixes our sidewalks. We're not going to ask them how they do it because we want to know what's the best approach and what's the best way, and does everybody agree, and does everybody in the city support the fact that we need sidewalks? No, we trust the professionals. We know that they know. We might have conversations, and we might want to have input. But we don't ask to do their jobs. They know what they need, and we need to trust them. Andy Egmont has done her due diligence for us in this city. Do we need NYS? Is that legitimately a question? If that's legitimately a question, then I suggest you go spend some time with the kids down at NYS. Because yes, it's needed. It's been needed. It's always been needed. It was needed 35 years ago when every kid I knew was a latchkey kid in this town. There was nowhere to go. This is ridiculous. We need to just accept that this is a good, positive thing for the community, for all of our kids. It affects everybody. And if the community rages against us for doing it, I would be pretty remiss to find that to be any kind of realistic result. So I apologize for feeling a little bit disheartened, but I really strongly feel that this is something we should be able to come together on and not continue needling and saying no every time they come to us with a next step. The at-large counselor is 100% correct. We do need to send a signal to our youth, to our vulnerable youth, and to our departments, who we need to put trust in. So thank you.
Can I ask that the administration please put this in as a communication in the next packet? Because I thought it my mistake for not requiring it this time.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Zede?
Thank you. I actually just wanted to put down a marker too that there's another piece of process missing, which is the displacement of the department that currently resides in 59 Low. At the same time, I want to correct the record. It's factually inaccurate to say that the council said no to everything. If you recall, we bought 59 Low Street this year. We also funded the plan that, or the consultancy money that delivered this plan, so that's a factually inaccurate statement. And I think, to be blunt, there were some parts of the previous comments that bordered on intent, and I'm not going to return that, but I do want to flag that that's not something that we're supposed to be doing on the floor. Thank you.
Councilor Wallace, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up, and again, I was going to say this earlier, but we're kind of like at the point now where we could be making some big decisions, and I just hope that everybody can respect that there are going to be counselors that have questions, they need information. It's to get the very best project we can get. We need to respect the counselors' thoughts. That's what we're here for. We're here for oversight, and it's also a lot of money. So it may take time to get things vetted, and things may have to be tweaked, but we have to understand that is our process, and nobody, at least speaking for myself, is out to say yes or no to this, but we have to follow the process. And I think that's what we're trying to understand right now, or I'm trying to understand. What is the process going forward so that it's most efficient and thorough, and there's not duplicative efforts? Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Cameron.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to second everything that the Ward 4 councilor said there. I think there are many paths to get to a place where we look at a need, a department's need, a part of our constituents, what their needs are, and figure out how we fill that need with money or programming or a building. So there's many paths to get to those sort of decisions, and I think having this go to committee is a place where a lot of this, if not all of it, can be vetted and put out. I was going to make a joke that maybe we should hold on this and do something less controversial like the zoning, but there's no perfect one way that this has to go. In the end, whether it's divisive or not, I think is really, it's the community telling us, yes, we really want this, or no, we really don't want it, or yeah, we want it, but we don't think we can afford it. I think we make the best decisions we can make, and in the end, there's going to be a yes or no vote, or a series of yes or no votes on this, and I think that's how we're just going to have to grind it out. So I'm very supportive of this going to Budget and Finance and as a committee of the whole right now, and it may take a while, and because there was a lot to digest in a short time, and I'm sure every counselor had a chance to meet with the administration along the way. I think this is a plan that is, it's not building the Taj Mahal, but it does meet the needs of those kids. So I'm sure we're all going to try to support it. And in the end, whether we do or not, I think is, to me, in a large part, is the financing. But I think it's a very good start, and I commend the administration for bringing it forward.
With that being said, we will get a communication in the next packet. That presentation will be part of it. Councilor Zede, I wouldn't expect you to work on this week, but I don't want to not put it in right now. So if we want to go on, is there any further discussion here?
Just one small point.
Councilor Vogel?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to just say, just one small point, is that I have no expectation that this, by going to committee, either singularly or committee of the whole, which I hope it'll go, is an approval of the plan. I don't think that that's what this is asking. I think that what I'm asking is that in committee, that the discussion stays on actually a bit of a higher level. And we talk about all of the costs ahead of us and so on and so forth. I think that's the role of where it falls into Budget and Finance. I think when the plan comes in, then it goes to wherever it goes. It would be a municipal building, that would be general government. It's not necessarily assigned to anybody. Who knows where it goes? But let the plan come in, let the plan be discussed there. But I think that this needs to be in Budget and Finance as a signal that we are moving forward on it. We're going to take a look at it on the higher level as it relates to all of our other expenditures, et cetera. That's the way I see it.
Thank you, Councilor Vogel. Further discussion. So the motion on the floor is to send this to Budget and Finance,
In committee of the whole.
Committee of the Whole.
Roll call?
Roll call.
Roll call on moving order 388 to Budget and Finance Committee of the whole. Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
No.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
No.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
And Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Ordinances. Oh, Councilor McCauley.
Order 389, which was a late file, naming rights.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if sending it to the ad hoc committee is the appropriate thing to do, or if you want to send it to Budget and Finance. I'll leave it.
I think the ad hoc.
Motion to refer 389 to the ad hoc for Market Landing Park.
Second.
Councilman.
All right, all those in favor of sending it to ad hoc, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Did I miss anything else? All right. Ordinances.
We are at a second reading for Building Inspector Enforcement Ordinance 117.
Motion to approve on second reading?
Second.
All right, roll call.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
And Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Motion passes. That leads us to second reading of Amendment of Municipal Fees, Ordinance 118.
Motion to approve on second reading?
Second.
All right, roll call.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right.
That brings us to ordinance 128, being submitted to change the number of standing committees from 9 to 6. And by way of brief summary, that leaves us with Committee on Budget and Finance, eliminating Committee on Education, leaves us with Committee on General Government, Committee on Licensing Permits, Committee on Neighborhood and City Services is now, would be called Committee on City Services, Committee on Planning and Development, Committee on Public Safety, Facilities and Services would be the new name of Committee on Public Safety.
Motion to refer to Rules and the Committee of the Whole.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right,
No.
One no?
sorry. My apologies, Councilor Lane.
No worries.
All right, ordinance 129.
Ordinance 129 is defining conflict rule for department heads.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance?
Second.
Discussion?
I really don't have I don't know exactly. I mean, you could make an argument for general government, which I don't oppose. It's just there has to do with some money in there too, and the next one's likely would be more square, so I just thought they'd go together, but I'm not, you know. And if that's okay, then I'll just do collectively 129 and 130 together.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
And could I just speak to 130 briefly? So I'm putting these two in. I'm hoping to, obviously, to see them pass. But just a more broad thing is, this is a start. I think we need a lot of reform on some of these things, and they're very difficult to talk about, and I acknowledge that. But at the same time, I think we've had some episodes recently that make us question this, and that having some rules will just make everything easier. On the grants, gifts, and fees, you know, there are three specific issues that are really challenging for me. Through some research I've been doing in preparation for these, found an easement given to a resident without involvement of the city council in exchange for a donation to a Friends of group. That's very troubling. under the previous administration. The second one was one we've seen come and go from here several times, Colby Farm Lane. There's the Parks building we were going to get, then the 60,000, now we've gotten 30,000, and that definitely straddled some kind of definition between grant, gift, or fee, depending on what day of the week it was. And then, as we'll be talking about, I think, going forward, there are some material discrepancies with the Parks Conservancy as it relates to money that they show on public filings having gone to the city, and what I'm able to find or account for in conjunction with research from the clerk's office about orders that exist or don't exist, with the city accepting those funds and then appropriating them. So there are some, in my opinion, material, some cases severe deficiencies, and I think these two things could be a start to just clear it all out and say these are the rules. And so I look forward to discussing them in committee. Thank you.
Okay.
Point of order, can we add committee of the whole?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I think that was my second as well.
So,
to both, sure.
So I have a collective order, 129, 130, Budget and Finance and Committee of the Whole, seconded by?
My second.
Councilor Vogel.
All right. All those in favor to send both collectively Committee of the Whole to Budget and Finance, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. I think that gets us to committee items, if I haven't missed anything. All right, the first one is ad hoc committee on Brown School reuse. Councilor Vogel, anything there?
I'm sorry, thank you. Just a reminder that the meeting is 9, thank you, 7 o'clock, and we decided on.
Yes, we'll be at the senior center upstairs in the boardroom. I will be sending a confirmation tomorrow with the details.
And that's in person, but we are going to hybrid it, not hybrid it, we're going to Zoom it so that it's can be reviewed.
All right, thank you, Councilor Vogel.
Thank you, Andy.
All right, next is the ad hoc on Market Landing Park. So I will give an update on our committee from last week. So we met with Sasaki last Wednesday. Marion Braco, PM from Sasaki, and Steve Engler were both there, presenting the phase 1 through 3 designs that were presented to the planning board. Those documents have been approved to the planning board. Our discussion included EV charging stations, that's part of phase 2, number of spaces for EV, and Councilor McCauley requested some information from Sasaki's electrical engineer on that assessment. Had a discussion about the number of spaces that should be included for phase 2. As far as parking spaces, there's a concern that we probably need some more. We discussed the ongoing need for a maintenance plan, which we all did agree needed to be addressed in the coming months. We discussed how the funds the city and the city administration has allocated through grants, the Herman Roy Fund and the CPA, don't get us to everything we want with phase 1. There are lots of swings and seating areas that we will need to fundraise for. But what phase 1 does get us to is get us to the infrastructure for the park. Lastly, we did discuss the ad hoc's go-forward plans, because I think the original plan was the ad hoc was going to be around and we were going to be the ones that turned over the park to the Waterfront Trust in the end. I think that's a long way out, so we are going to discuss at our next meeting what our go-forward plans are and whether there's some things we could wrap up and probably disband and allocate the rest of the park to other committees. So lastly, the committee did vote 4-1 to recommend approval of this design to the full council. This is Order 385. And I just want to say that with all that we have before us tonight, this is the backbone of the park. This is the infrastructure that we all said that this council could bring to the city. It's been approved by the planning board. It's only phase 1 tonight. Phase 2 and 3 are not on the table. It's not the parking areas, it's not the visitor center. It is just phase 1. It is just the backbone and infrastructure. But that is what this council can give to the city. So I would hope that we can gain consensus on at least moving this forward. We have the funding. We just need to make sure that this council approves this phase 1 design, which will allow the planning department to get Sasaki to give us construction documents, bid documents that can go out for actual quotes this year. So with that said, motion to approve Order 385.
Second.
Discussion. Counselor McCauley?
I'll wait, Councilor Lane was first.
Counselor Lang?
I just want to know if this, this fits state code, and this is, all this information that is being passed through has been accurate from Sasaki?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And the planning board's approved it as well. They've gone through about 3 or 4 reviews. So, Counselor McCauley?
Yeah, I'm going to make an amendment to this. The information in our packet is not what we voted on. And so the information that we voted on was actually a separate attachment, which was the 1025 PDF that was there. And so it had done the value engineering. It was very specific to what we had approved. So my amendment is that we would replace what's in the packet with what is, it's listed here as a separate attachment, but we'd replace it with the Sasaki slides of 1025-22, which is the discussion we had that night.
Okay. Thank you, Counselor McCauley. So is there a second on that amendment?
Second. Sure.
Thank you. Further discussion, Counselor Z? Did you have
Not on the amendment, I can wait. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Counselor McCauley. Further discussion, Counselor Wallace?
Just a question. With the discrepancy, were there any substantial changes in your opinion, if I may ask?
Counselor McCauley, you're certainly...
Yeah, there were, the waterfront's the waterfront, right? But the substantial changes were the size and scope of Phase 1, right? They were trying to fit it into a certain dollar amount with contingencies, et cetera, along the way. And so where Phase 1 had covered most, in our packet, it covers almost everything right up until the parking areas and this and that. It has been cut down a little bit to just the, from the water out to the plaza and then the ways to the water out. And they've pushed some other things to Phase 2 that would have been in Phase 1, and that's really it.
So Phase 2 is mainly the parking lots, and Phase 3 is the visitor center.
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Further questions? Right.
On the amendment?
Roll call on the amendment? Well, I guess we can, since it's
We
in
can
order, we can do...
I think what's on the floor, I think, is a motion to amend
Correct.
first and seconded.
Right.
And that would be to replace it with the 1025 slides.
Correct. All right. So all those in favor of approving the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Very good.
Counselor Z.
Thank you. I wanted to address, it's a Sharif kind of night, so I'm sorry, but I was the one on the 4-1, and I wanted to explain my vote. And so I opposed the bond order that sort of precipitated. This was the confirmatory on the project. So I just have 3 kind of points I want to make. One is on the project itself, I have a little bit of a different interpretation. I think that unfortunately, and to some degree it's out of our control, market conditions have changed, and it's caused the project to get whittled down so much that, to me, it is not a worthwhile expenditure at this cost. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of money, and I think we're being generous when we're saying that they shrunk down a little bit of the part of the park we're getting. In my opinion, we're spending $5 million here, and I don't think residents are going to be wowed by what we get for that 5. Now, again, it doesn't matter whose fault it is, whatever. Inflation stinks. It's kind of hurting us on all different fronts. But we had a long conversation. We are going to be begging for donations for things as small as benches now. The donations were the big things, the really big things like huge swings that maybe people associate with the Greenway in Boston, these really big amenities. Now they're down to like just a place to sit at the park. And for me, that was kind of a discussion during the bond, and I think if you really study the details, you'll see that Sasaki did the best they could, but you can only do what you can do, and I don't think this is the right design at the right money. So those are my thoughts on the project and the plan. But the broader thing I wanted to say is really, and this is just so endemic to everything. To me, this is such a classic Newburyport story with the waterfront project. It's been around for a long time. Generally, people would say they're supportive of having something done, and we say, let's keep it simple and let's build a park. And then all of a sudden, we're spending $5 million, and we're not even getting a culvert, which then can be claimed to say is not part of this project, but really, again, is hard to separate from the two. And so from a process perspective, I am asking the council to really, we're going to have to start being that check and balance on some of these things. And I don't know at what point during the project or which part of the process it is. You know, we want to send a signal we're in support of something, but then all of a sudden we're into something we can't necessarily back out of. This is not, in my opinion, a success, and we have no plan to maintain it. We don't have any. We don't know where to pay it. We fell down on the continuing the conversation on the waterfront trust transfer and the changes of the documents there, which you mentioned. I mean, these are institutional things, having been at this for a long time. So I think we really need to do some soul searching about how do you get the right process on these big projects where you don't end up, in my opinion, in a point where you know, we're going to be taking votes, in my opinion, to some degree out of sequence, or trying to figure out how to shoehorn things back in. So for that reason, I'm going to oppose. I don't think this is the right project at the right time, and those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zaid. Further comments or discussion? Councilor Lang.
I'm just going to echo, I'm not in support of any part of the waterfront project at this time again. I feel the Ward 1 councilor summed it up well. I don't think it's a very smart move to be spending even more money on a park when we just had a contentious moment about NYS. So my question to the administration is, what is the priorities? Because we're coming into a tough time this winter, and spending all this money right now sends out a really bad signal to our residents who are looking at a real tough winter in the face. So I'll be saying no to this, and I yield with that.
Thank you, Councilor Lang. Further comments or discussion? All right, roll call.
Motion to approve Order 385 as amended. Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
No.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
No.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
9-2, motion passes.
All right. The other item that was in our committee was the communication that we received on the project update. The committee voted to receive and file that 5-0. So communication 437, motion to receive and file.
Second.
Comments, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, and thank you for all the comments, everyone. At our next meeting, we'll discuss some of those go-forward plans as well, in addition to the item that is now in there on the naming rights. All right, next, Budget and Finance, Councilor Zede.
Thank you. We only have one item coming out. It's Order 384, which is a supplemental budget. I will be making motions on the lines, similar to how we do the budget, because that's how we took them in committee, with some of them being collective. So just to set the stage before we get into the lines, the committee met twice on this. We couldn't finish it all in one night. We did have primarily Ethan Manning from the administration joining us, but Andrew, I think, was also there for one of the meetings. And just so you know, this is a supplemental budget, so it's not a transfer, but it's actually an allocation of currently unallocated funds. They are unallocated because there was $157,200 cut from the general fund by the city council, and then in addition to that, there was approximately $130,000 of additional state aid and some other revenues that came in slightly better than expected, giving us this unallocated money. Just to be clear, the reason, again, back to how the order of things works with the tax rate is we have to do this now before we can set a tax rate, because if we don't solidify the budget, then we don't have a basis to set the levy, and then we don't have a basis from there to set the tax rate. So if we do not pass some of these, for example, then they simply don't become part of the budget. They don't become part of what we need to collect in order to fund the city, and they become that gap in between what we choose to collect and what our actual levy limit is, that so-called 2.5 levy limit. So basically this request asks to take about $270,000 out of the $280,000 unallocated funds. So there'd be $10K either way, even if everything passed. Okay, so hopefully that's enough on the basis. If you have the minutes, I tried to put a summary of votes in the end, and that's going to be the order we're going to go in. So first is a motion to approve collectively the 3 IT-related items, which is $21,000 deduction from the IT director, a $61,000 addition to the IT support staff, and a $3,825 addition to IT travel allowance collectively to approve.
Second.
So We met on this, and we did talk with the finance director again, primarily about this. So as we know, IT has been in a bit of flux, and when we met, the offer had not yet been extended to the IT director. So I just want to say that we were talking about it then, and at the time, the search had been continuing, and they'd been trying to find somebody to come in, and in the end, felt that this was basically a reduction from the IT director's salary, not because there wasn't a desire to have an IT director, but it essentially is a proration. It's removing enough money that would have caught between the beginning of the fiscal year and now. I did follow up with finance just to make sure, now that an offer has been extended, that the line does have enough money to pay that salary for the remainder of the fiscal year. So in other words, the 21K is not going to cause a deficit in that line. It's just a proration because the fiscal year started July and now it's already October. And so there were some months in there where it did not need to be paid. And then, probably not surprisingly, in order to kind of fill some of the gaps, if you will, with the needs of IT, they were leaning more on the support staff, which is the external, that's the $61,000. And so that was the reason for the increase there. And then the travel allowance is a fairly small amount, but you know, to move between the buildings and all that sort of thing. So collectively, the committee recommends to you approval of these three by a vote of 3-0.
Further discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
These three.
Aye.
Thank
Any
you.
opposed? Okay.
Next is a motion to approve 191 legal for $50,000.
Second.
So we did talk about this actually at both meetings. We had some very good questions come from the committee. So this really is Waterfront West driven. That really is what it is. It's not so much other things. And it is essentially to have outside counsel. Some will recall from the previous iterations of Waterfront West, you know, there were discussions about whether the landowner might, you know, pay for us to have an attorney, but in this case, the administration is asking us to fund it directly. We then did also get into a discussion about the city solicitor itself, which again is not this firm, about their rates, and we asked for some detail on that, and hopefully that'll be forthcoming when we get to that appointment in January. In terms of this specific attorney, there was also a request to know more about the firm and the attorney, and I think some information has been provided, and I'm sure more is forthcoming. I also know that there have been ongoing discussions, and the mayor has the advisory committee around Waterfront West. So it's $50,000 specific for that purpose. Committee deliberated and comes to you with a recommendation of 3-0.
Thank you. Further discussion? Council Wright.
I would just like to ask the administration if the announcements of the grant that they received for the same amount has anything to do with this?
That would be for a different piece of work. The grant that we received would be for more of the zoning work and more from a planning perspective, less from a legal. If there's a way to use some of it for this, we will certainly try, but they're the same amounts, but they're not related to the same projects.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All right. All those in favor of approving cost center 191 for $50,000, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, Councilor Z.
Next is a motion to approve police training, $10,800.
Second.
Thank you. So this is a bit of a restoration from a line cut from the budget. You know, we've had ongoing discussions throughout the years about the travel training being sort of conglomerated under the mayor's office, which we've seen in past years, versus having it in the lines of the department to which it applies. The finance director told us that this was an effort to try and allocate some of those funds to the department where it pretty much gets used all the time. In this case, there is a specific need. I think the mayor mentioned this in the update, but one officer has been sent to the academy, and I think the plan is to send at least another one. So it's $5,400 I have written down here to go to the academy, so 10-8 is for your two folks. And then this was approved 3-0, the police line, or recommended for your approval, 3-0 in committee.
Further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving cost center 210, police, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next.
Fire overtime, motion to approve $20,000.
Second.
So just a brief history, fire overtime has always been a bit of a challenge, especially in years of late where unfortunately there have been some absences and injuries and on-the-job issues. So this is I guess, a preemptive strike at overtime. Last year, you'll recall in the budget, there was a substantial increase in the budget just to try and get the budgeted figure to be more like what reality would likely end up being. Then we talked about in committee, is this going to be enough to really not require that classic end-of-year transfer? The answer was, probably not, but it's a step in the right direction. And COVID, obviously, like many things, messed with our numbers, so some of the ups and downs don't make sense when you look at 2020 in the midst. But generally speaking, we're looking at a net increase pre-COVID, which you would expect, but it's not as dramatic as you might think. So again, the amount's $20,000. The committee vote was a 2-to-1 to recommend approval. I was the dissenting vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zaid. Further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving item 220, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Next.
Okay, next is DPS Highway Sidewalk 62275.
Second.
Thank you. So this is not for exactly for like a specific sidewalk or specific project. This is essentially a balancing. As you know, the target is the 50% of the meals tax. The meals tax in FY22 was $764,579. So the 62 essentially brings it up to about that 50% mark. DPS will put it to good use, but this is not a transfer for a specific segment of sidewalk or project or anything like that. 3-0 in committee.
Thank you. Discussion. All those in favor of 421, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next.
Okay, next up is Youth Services Rental Space 542, $30,000.
Second.
Okay, so there wasn't an inclusive memo, which perhaps you had an opportunity to read, but basically this was an amount to fund some rental space from Youth Services. We had some discussion about the hourly rate that we were paying, and then we also had a discussion about the procurement process. This was negotiated by the administration to try and bring the cost down as much as possible. In terms of procurement, this falls under, quote, lease of purchase or real property, section 16. So because it's under $35,000, my understanding from my notes here is we don't have to solicit formal proposals. At the time then, now we're talking about things that have happened, but there was a plan for a presentation of 59 low, which now we've had. Then we had a continued, discussion. We talked about some things about the BRES, can we use the schools and those sorts of things. Things that we've probably heard along the way. And then lastly, again, I'll leave to detail to the memo, but there's the church over on Purchase Street that's being utilized, and then there's other space, and they budgeted what they thought the total amount of time. This one does come out of committee 1-2 with the recommendation to approve, if you will, 1-2. That's the recommendation.
Thank you, Councilor Zaid. Further discussion or comments? Councilor Vogel?
Yes, I thank you, Council President. I just wanted to make a comment in reading your notes, which, by the way, you do take some serious notes.
Thank you.
So as I read through here, again, as an observation, not necessarily a judgment, that'll certainly sound like one. The concern that I have, and again, the Parks and Recreation or Youth Services falls very well within my bailiwick. I actually have a degree in Recreation and Leisure Studies, and I make really good use of it because I do recreate a lot. But nonetheless, when I see these references to using other buildings or using school buildings and so on and so forth, particularly school buildings, it's known that kids do not want to go back into a school building for their youth services. They just don't. And those services or what they experience are not as fulfilling as they are if they're away from their school environment. And I also read in here some ideas of maybe using this building or that building or various buildings. I think they need a place. I wholeheartedly support the rental of the church down on Prospect Street. So, and I hope all of you will, but we really need to get away from this idea that, we can just put them anywhere.
Thank you, Councilor Vogel. Further discussion, comments? All right, all those in favor of approving Cost Center 542 for Youth Services, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
1, 2, 3.
Next.
All right, next is Veteran Services Part-Time Office Assistant, $19,500.
Second.
So this is a rediscussion, or I guess the same discussion we had, because this was a cut made. As we did have Kevin Hunt join us, the department head, and essentially there have been some state mandates or state changes in terms of having to utilize certain systems, and that is creating some additional stresses on the staff in terms of their time. The $19,500 was asked for during the budget, as I mentioned, but was cut, and this is essentially a request to put it back in. We did talk about it a little bit more, but I think it's kind of the same conversation during the budget. And the only thing I guess I would add, it was a question was, do we anticipate receiving the shares from the other communities, as this is a regional program, to, so that we're not paying the full $19,500? The answer was yes, that's the expectation, but to the best of our knowledge, there isn't a vote to point to and say, in the other community or an IMA that we were able to point to and say this is where it's been agreed to formally. So that's a balance point for you to consider. It was a 2-to-1 in committee in favor of your recommending to you to approve.
Thank you, Councilor Zeig. Further comments or discussion? All right, all those in favor of Cost Center 543 Veteran Services say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Next.
Last one is 630 Parks Landscape Supplies, $35,000. So this is, as with others, this is an existing line in the budget. Try and make a long story short. Inspections were done on the city's playgrounds. It was determined that the wood chip depth was below standard. There's a standard that governs that. And so as a result, they needed to be refilled in order to meet that standard. That has already been done. So the city had to order a ton of wood chips, and then they got distributed to the various parks. As a result, that really depleted the landscape supplies line that was in the budget. And as a result, this is a request to try and essentially top off, since it's early in the fiscal year, that amount. Councilor Khan had some good questions about purchase of services versus purchase of supplies and which category maybe this fell in. We had a little bit of conversation on that. We didn't get any change per se, but that was a good part of the conversation. The committee recommends to you that you approve it by a vote of 2-to-1.
Okay. Further comments or discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving Cost Center 430 for the parks, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. No.
Roll call.
Roll call on the $35,000. Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
No.
Councilor McCauley?
No.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zeid?
No.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
3 noes, motion passes.
So thank you very much. That's it for the supplemental, and that's it for budget in terms of material coming out. Quick update, we are going to have our standing meeting on Thursday. Our top priority is to tackle Communication 436, which is the park bench letter, get an update on the ARPA, 250K from Amesbury, and then we will start to wade through all of the new work that we received tonight. But I just want to again say that NYS is not on this for Thursday in any meaningful way. I'm going to just open it up here and say if you want to email me any preemptive questions you have, any requests for anybody you'd like me to start thinking about inviting as I try and figure out when we can do this, that would be very much appreciated, and I'll certainly pull my colleagues on the committee to see what they like, but it's committee of the whole, so everybody's welcome. And then we do have a number of free cash things, and then I'm guessing that the tax rate will come in the next packet, would be my guess. So likely that will be not this Thursday, but just to give you a foreshadow, likely the next budget meeting after our next council, we'll get into that. Okay. And we'll be starting at 6 on Thursday to try and get ahead. Thank you very much. That's it for budget.
Quick question.
Councilor Blaine.
So it says it's committee of the whole on the ARPA issue. Is that also, does that stand for the letter as well? So the whole meeting is committee of the whole?
No, just 336.
Okay.
And any other items that we put in tonight that were committee of the whole?
Yeah, 436 wasn't referred to committee of the whole. If there's sufficient interest, this is our chance. Okay. I mean, if there's no objections, I'll just motion to waive the rules, motion to take it out, motion to refer it back to Budget and Finance and Committee of the Whole, omnibus one thing, see you next year. And if that's okay, I'll make that motion.
Second that.
All
Not
right.
as fast, though.
Everyone got that? That basically makes 436 committee of the whole.
Bring it out, put it back in, Committee of the Whole, that's all.
All
waive
those
the
in
rules.
favor of making Communication 436 Committee of the Whole, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
All set, thank you.
All right. Counselor Khan, Education.
Yeah, motion to receive and file Communication 434, Whittier Tech Annual Operational Report.
Second.
Counselor Khan.
Yes, thank you, Council President. So the Committee on Education met October 17th. We had before us a communication on the Whittier Tech Annual Report, which is a very short 2-pager. We did get into a conversation. We had Superintendent Lynch there from Whittier Tech, and we also had their, I would say their finance kind of director there, Ms. Castorelli. Together, they kind of gave a snapshot on the general makeup in terms of Newburyport students that are mainly highlighted in this 2-pager here. This was our first opportunity to have the superintendent there in terms of the education committee and get to ask a little bit about Whittier Tech and its contribution to Newburyport. It was interesting to see how the superintendent of the public schools, in coordination with Whittier Tech as well as Essex community, still has an opportunity to reach students, even though they're freshmen or sophomores in the high school, and never really deny them an opportunity when maybe a vocational technical school is a viable option for them. And I thought that was actually an asset and valuable aspect of what Whittier Tech offers and provides for the students. They've also talked a little bit about pivoting their programs, and one of the ones that has been included, which they talked a little bit about, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but it's on the, I want to say boat motor replacement program, and there's like a short abbreviation for it. But it was something that they were saying a skill set that's really lacking in our state, and especially if you look regionally, where areas really need that skills. And that seems to be a growing interest, and they actually had an open house last weekend highlighting and showcasing. So I offer any counselors here that were interested in seeing this, they are willing to even walk through and show anyone who's interested. They're very proud of it. So it was a really good meeting. We did talk in anticipation for November 15th. Meeting of the council and the school committee. That's going to be pretty much we're not having a November meeting in anticipation of that, but during our conversations with the superintendent, we did ask that they have taken the strategic plan process that some of us were part of last year, and it's been formulated into a series of steps that they want to incorporate as they look at budgeting for the future. And I asked that on the 15th they provide some of those slides for us and give us that overview too, so we could put that all together with what we talk about for their formation of their upcoming budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Z.
I just want to ask one question of the chair. Did anything come up about the capital efforts they're in the midst of? I know, did that come up at all?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, that was one of the things too, that when they're going to provide the budget, if there's anything that they could also share from that perspective to be part of that presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Councilor Wright.
Now, just a quick question. When do you think we would know how many? It tells the enrollment we're going to graduate 8 students. Do we know how many are going to enter into the program, or when we would know that? If you could ask that.
No, that I'm trying to remember, and I could ask my colleagues on the committee. But I don't think we did talk. I don't know if they had that number, but we did talk a little bit about that. So I could follow up and get that. Superintendent Lynch was very excited to. They were ready to come to Newburyport, but I think information, if people have questions, that was one of the things I offered. If people email them to me, or I could give you the superintendent's email directly, and people could ask those questions. I did ask about Newburyport's formula, which they didn't really have. That's a very complicated one, and I did ask if there's anything that they had that would help us understand our contribution and how that is derived. That is something I thought would be really helpful for us to know, because we do contribute a lot there. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, motion on the floor is to receive and file Communication 434. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, anything else, Councilor Khan?
No, thank you.
All right, general government, we don't have anything committee. We did get a few items tonight. We'll be meeting on November 10th. License and permits. Councilor Lane.
Nothing for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Lane. Councilor Wallace, Neighborhood and City Services.
Yes, thank you. Motion to approve appointment 339 which is the reappointment of Kevin Hunt as Veterans Agent.
Second.
All right, we had a nice meeting with Mr. Hunt a couple weeks ago, and just kind of touch base with him. He has been in his position since 2007. He's explaining that it is a regional effort between Newburyport, Amesbury, Merrimack, and Salisbury. He said when he started, there were about 1,100 veterans in Newburyport, and now he guesses there's probably 800 to 900 in Newburyport. He said a lot of his time is spent working with helping veterans with lower income with services. And one item that he thinks needs more work is on increasing the housing stock or lower income housing stock for veterans, because there's a real shortage. So we thanked him for his service, and it was approved out of committee 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wallace. Further discussion, comments, questions? All right, roll call on approval of appointment.
Actually, I do have one quick question.
Councilor Z.
Just as a matter of consistency, I want to start asking this so I would remind myself, but is there any contractual term that come up at all in conversation about an alignment between the appointment and a contract? And I don't know if Andrew just left, but I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't know. Andrew might be better, but I just was curious.
I do not know, but that is interesting moving forward as we appoint people, to keep that in mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe we could just put a pin in that and get the answer, but it would be
Certainly.
good to just know that each appointment that comes through. Thank you.
Nope, fair comment. All right. So roll call on the appointment for 339.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Since Chief of Staff Levine is here, not to put him on the spot, but do you happen to know the answer to Councilor Zeed's question regarding the appointment? Is there a contractual obligation on Kevin Hunt's appointment, term-wise?
Just notes.
No, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right, anything else, Councilor Wallace?
Nothing further to report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Planning and Development, Councilor Cameron.
Nothing to report.
All right, Councilor McCauley, Public Safety.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to approve collectively appointment 341, 42, 43, 44, 45, and 46.
Second.
I'm just going to give you the highlights of these. For 341, Greg Downs, Mike Merriman, and Andrew Malatesta, they are reappointments. The Assistant Harbor Master. Mr. Downs has been a pump boat operator for a few years now. Mike Merriman has been with us 3 years. He's a captain in Salem. He supplements his time on the water. Andrew Malatesta says he loves working with the public and promoting public safety going forward. Appointments 344, 45, and 46. They are new appointments, William Jarman, Bill Molnar, and Michael Maylett. William has been on the Merrimack for 30 years, runs a bass charter boat. Ben Molnar has been on the Coast Guard and spent 8 years on the Merrimack. His passion is boating, and Michael has 25 years on the river and has been working at the Cashman dock. Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
I thought we did that.
I thought I did second.
Any other questions? All right. All those in favor of approving collectively?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
And Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just one comment on that. We in the committee have noticing that the quality and caliber of the candidates coming forward in a lot of these, this group in particular, were outstanding and is really raising the bar on our level of expertise on the river. That said, motion to approve ordinance 123, handicap spot on Plummer Ave.
Second.
This is a request for number 10 Plummer Street. It starts about 5 feet north of where we approved the drop-off area. The resident was in attendance via Zoom to explain her changing circumstances, and because of the traffic that's there and the anticipated traffic, she has needs where a caregiver has to come over, as well as a couple of caregivers plus her own car, and the request was for a handicap spot painted on the ground as opposed to just a sign given where the drop-off is for that area.
Councilor Wallace, then Councilor Z.
Thank you. Yes, this is in Ward 4, and this is right near the Head Start preschool. And this was just one item that didn't get included when we had that whole slew of parking orders that came through. And so this request is actually a direct result of us putting in a drop-off area. So she had concerns that with that designated drop-off area and some parking changes, that there would not be that option for services to park there. And also, just to be clear, this is not a designated spot for a single person. It's a handicap spot. So it still can be used by anybody, and it's not, this residence spot. But I think it's also, it could be used for purposes of the school or for the ball games or whatnot. So I fully support this, and that's all. Thanks.
Councilor Wallace. Councilor Z.
I'm debating now because we started adding expirations to these just because we ended up with so many of them on the books, and they were often a specific resident request, and then that person would move or whatever, and the spot would just end up staying in the code, and other residents would come and say, nobody ever uses that spot. Could we, could it not be? So I defer really to the ward counselor because they know the situation better. If this is more of a generic spot, maybe it doesn't make sense, but if it really is a resident request, I would suggest a 5, 8, or 10-year, horizon on this. That way, it can be reevaluated, and if it's still needed, it can be extended. And I think a long runway makes sense. I was going to suggest, I don't know, December 31st, 2027, or something like that. But maybe before I motion, I'll ask if we think it's more generic or it's more specific.
Councilor Wallace.
I don't really have a preference. I would imagine, or I guess I'm curious if this is something that we normally do. I do think in this instance, it's not a bad idea to have a handicap spot on that side of the street, like I said, for the school as well. Because they do have spots, but it's on Merrimack. So since it is a loading zone, I think it would have additional uses, but I'm fine either way. I guess I defer to the other council members on their thoughts.
Councilor Preston, and then Councilor Donahue.
Yeah, I was actually going to make the same suggestion, especially with the request to paint the ground as opposed to just using a signage. It seems to me, again, it seems with all of these, people move, people pass on, and therefore it doesn't seem that we should just have handicap zones in perpetuity. So I would very much like to see some sort of time frame added to this, but I don't have a suggestion on exactly what that time frame is.
Councilor Donahue.
Thank you, President. Well, I would normally agree with the Ward 1 and at-large councilor sentiment that we should have some ability to sort of follow up on these residential handicap spots. More to the Ward 4 councilor's point, I think in this particular instance, it does make sense to have it with the markings on the ground, for one, because it is so close to the school zone and the busy traffic. But I do foresee it getting used by the school, by the Pioneer League visitors, really in longevity if for any reason that homeowner no longer uses that space. I think that particular location could continue to serve as an ideal handicap parking space, which is why I would go that step further to delineate it with the markings on the ground as well.
But normally, I would say that they should have expiration dates on them. I just think that the proximity of this to the school and the park make it a little bit of a more unique situation that we should kind of look at broader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Donahue. Councilor Wallace.
Yeah, also, another point is we're about to put in an accessible playground right nearby. Again, it doesn't mean that we can't put in some sort of, time limit and they'd have to come back, but if that's something that the council wants to do, I would suggest maybe we come up with some sort of policy and not just have it be case by case. So that's all. Thanks.
Okay, Councilor Preston.
Thank you. I was just going to suggest that that school is certainly not guaranteed to be there forever as well. It's only been there now for a year. So there's no suggestion that that school is going to be there forever and the need for a handicap spot for that school would be there forever. And it's my understanding that there are handicap spots on the Merrimack side of Pioneer League that would well serve people going to Pioneer League, both the park as well as the playground. So why we would want to have a handicap parking spot quite a distance, actually, from the Pioneer League and the playground over there, I don't understand.
Councilor McCauley, then Councilor Zede.
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment to insert the language, said space shall expire in 5 years from the date first written above.
Second.
Councilor Donahue.
Can we make it 10 to be more realistic?
Sure. I'm okay with it.
Anyone disagree with that?
Friendly amendment?
It just strikes me as arbitrary.
Friendly amendment.
Because this is certainly something that we could reapprove in 5 years. 10 years seems very arbitrary to me, but 5 is arbitrary in ways as well.
The motion is to extend for a period of 10 years.
All right. So are you here to talk about the amendment now?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm good with 5 or 10. I just wanted to answer the Ward 4 Councilor's point too. It hasn't been, we haven't done one in a little while that wasn't downtown. But all the ones I've put in my ward since I've been on, I've put, and they've all been 5. But there's not a rule that says 5 is perfect either. So in this case, I think 10 would be fine. It's enough time to assess in 10 years. And then if everybody's gone or everything's changed, it's not there anymore. If it needs to be there, it can be. So I'm good either way. I'll support the amendment. It's fine with me.
Sorry, this is my very last one. I just want to say the reason that I'm particularly sensitive about this spot is we are, as you're likely aware, taking 40 spots off of Jefferson Street with all the chicanes and the proposed chicanes. So the idea of having a handicap spot that could sit for 10 years, I mean, say this person moves away a year from now, that spot could sit for 9 years completely unused. But it's just where my sensitivity comes from.
Okay. Councilor Wallace.
Thank you. I would say yes, she requested it, but as a sponsoring counselor, I also saw the need for it with the school. I think that is a loading zone. There was almost a catastrophic accident there. This is an area where kids from lower incomes or troubled families drop off. A lot of grandparents have to drop off. So the space will get used. I'm fine with the time frame. If we want to have some sort of compromise, we could do 10 years, but I think this particular location has extra circumstances, but again, I'd be fine with the 10 or 5, but anyways, that's how I feel. Thanks.
Go on.
Yeah, right.
I just want to say that I'm going to support what the ward councilor wants, and I'll leave it at that. Okay. We talked 10 minutes about a parking spot.
Yep. So is 10 on the floor?
Yes.
10 is on the floor.
Okay. So why don't we vote on the amendment? All those in favor of changing the time limit to 10 years, say aye. Aye. All right.
I'm a no.
I'm a no as well.
2 noes.
Approve as amended.
All right. Any other discussion? All right. Motion to approve ordinance 123 as amendment. Roll call.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
No.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Wallace.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Motion approved, first reading.
Motion to approve 127, a handicap spot on Olive Street.
2 years.
We do it again.
We have a second, right? So this spot is at, outside of 13 Olive Street, and it is for a period of 2 years, and the sign is just fine.
And the
Can we
sign-
make it 3? Joke, that was a joke.
That's not a joke.
Can I move the question?
So this actually came, the request actually came from the resident's social worker, who is looking to make sure the person can stay in their home for 2 years. So, anyway, that's the reason I did
Good
it.
point.
Anyway, roll call on ordinance 127.
Counselor Khan?
Yes.
Counselor Lane?
Yes.
Counselor McCauley?
Yes.
Counselor Preston?
Yes.
Counselor Vogel?
Yes.
Counselor Wallace?
Yes.
Counselor Wright?
Yes.
Counselor Zede?
Yes.
Counselor Cameron?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
And Counselor Shamp?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes first reading.
Motion to approve ordinance 124.
Second.
This is to amend the ordinance for noise ordinance. We're adding specific language at the request of the administration and through the ward councilor as well, where we don't allow noise in the downtown district between 10 and 7. This restriction shall not apply to an emergency that is declared. It also allows the Department of Public Services and the Parks Department to have vehicles that may be idling between 5 and 10 p.m. Monday through Friday from April 1st to January 1st. And the reason being is that they've got to clean downtown. And our noise restrictions conflicts with the opening of downtown. So by the time they get around to cleaning it, there's people in the streets and all of that. So they're looking for an exception to help clean the streets. The residents are complaining about the streets being dirty and the trash, but on the other hand, we'll probably push this issue down where they don't like the street sweeper coming by at 5 a.m. But that's the request that has been made.
All right. Further discussion or comments? All right. Roll call on ordinance 124.
First reading, Counselor Khan?
Yes.
Counselor Lane?
Yes.
Counselor McCauley?
Yes.
Counselor Preston?
Yes.
Counselor Vogel?
Yes.
Counselor Wallace?
Yes.
Counselor Wright?
Yes.
Counselor Zede?
Yes.
Counselor Cameron?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
And Counselor Shamp? Thank
Yes.
you.
Motion to approve ordinance 126.
Second.
This is an amendment to the residential parking zones. Really, it is an amendment, an update of cleanup language in the definition of residential parking timing. More than anything else, it's to be consistent with everything else we're doing with outdoor dining and all the other different parking plans that we have. The request is to change from October 1st through April 30th to November 1st to March 31st. And then secondly, to change it from May 1st to September 30th to April 1st to October 31st. As you can see, all of these dates coincide with the other things that we have outside in terms of parking. And this was done by the request of the parking clerk, and it came out of committee 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing no hands.
There's one.
Where?
See.
Oh, Counselor Z.
Yeah, I'm going to oppose. I mean, it's funny to see all the things. I mean, to me, this is parklet related, right? I mean, that seems to be the most obvious thing is that we're bumping the month to coincide with, as the counselor said. But I mean, effectively, if you're a resident, if I'm reading this, if I'm understanding correctly, and it is getting in the evening, so if I'm wrong, correct me, but basically losing a month on either end of what used to be resident time now basically gets turned to downtown. And you know, I've been a long time questioner, I guess, of parklets. I understand the benefit, but I think we're seeing a lot of, I don't want to say problems, that's not the right word. We're seeing a lot of unintended consequences coming out of them. We're having this discussion about how does it relate to parking and zoning downtown, how does it relate now to residential, the hours, the money, all of these different pieces. And I think this is a transfer effectively from residents to businesses for 2 months, which is, you know, on either end, which is more significant than, than 2 months out of 12. I mean, so that's how I look at it. if I'm misunderstanding, please tell me what the genesis is, but it seems like this would align it more with the installation and removal of the parklets.
Councilor McCauley?
It does, but I think you are misunderstanding, right? Because currently, parklets run through October 31st, and so even if we let them have parking on October 1st, there'd be a parklet in their spot. So they're, on one aspect, we're aligning their ability to have a residential spot to what the parklets are doing, so that there isn't any overlap along the way. That's particular to the first ones. So starting today, starting today through March 31st, it would be a residential zone. On April 1st, when outdoor dining and parklets start, or potentially start, through October 31st, it would, we would take that away in those particular areas. So right calculation that it's a 1 month overlap, but it just aligns the residents what they're looking at right now. That's all.
All right, further questions, comments? All right, roll call.
Roll call, first reading. Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Wallace?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councilor McCauley?
Nothing further. I just wanted to mention, we do have 2 communications that are still in there, but they're in there because they're related to traffic safety on Merrimack, on that stretch that we're still having discussions about. So we haven't forgotten these people or their message of traffic safety. It's just, it's in the queue. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I yield.
Thank you for not forgetting Merrimack Street. Appreciate it. Public utilities,
Nothing tonight.
rules,
Nothing tonight.
good of the order. Anyone going once, twice?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.